If you've read Genesis carefully, you might have noticed something curious. There are two distinct narratives about the creation of humanity. In the first, man and woman are created together, in the image of God, as equal partners in creation. In the second version, Eve appears after Adam, made from one of her ribs. This difference may seem subtle, but it has generated great debates throughout history. Many scholars, noticing this contrast, began to ask themselves, what if the first woman raised with Adam is not Eve, but another woman who was forgotten or deleted from the main records? This is where Lilith comes in, as a possible figure to fill this narrative gap. She would represent the woman who was born along with the man, without submission or hierarchy. An equal companion, not an extension of the masculine. This reasoning has not come from now, dates back to ancient interpretations of Jewish sages and philosophers as a load of Alexandria. For them, the duplicity in the biblical accounts was not by chance, but carried deeper spirit and ethical messages. And if Lilith really existed before Eve, what does her exclusion tell us about the values of the time? The question paves the way to rethink not only creation, but the whole symbolic structure that came later. Did you know that the name Lilith appears directly in the Bible? Yeah, this happens in Isaiah 34:14, in a stretch that describes a desolate land inhabited by desert creatures. In this dark scene comes the Hebrew term lily, usually translated as owl or night creature. Only in the original, it's Lilith, not a metaphor, but a proper name. And this raises many questions about your true identity. Throughout translations, especially in Septuagint Greek and Vulgate Latin, this reference was softened or disguised. Over time, many modern versions of the Bible preferred to ignore Lilith's figure as a concrete character. This made it difficult to access its story, making it almost invisible to the common reader. But scholars of biblical Hebrew have already been arguing that Lilith is not just a symbol, she represents something older and disturbing. This erasure was not by chance. Lilith represented forces that challenge control, night, desire, independence, dark motherhood, everything that did not fit into the domesticated feminine ideal. Therefore, the choice to soften his name in translations was not just a linguistic issue, it was a cultural and ideological decision. And this forgotten biblical detail is the key to understanding why it has resurfaced so hard in modern times. Long before Lilith was mentioned in the Bible, she already terrified the imagination of the peoples of Mesopotamia. Known as Lilitu or Ardent Lily, this figure was feared as a female spirit that was around night, attacking pregnant and newborn women. It was associated with disease, infertility, and sudden death, especially during delivery. The people believed that she took advantage of moments of vulnerability to act. It wasn't just a myth, it was a real and everyday fear. These reports appear in Sumerian and Akkaditos texts, such as passages from the famous Gilgamesh epic. In it, a creature similar to Lilith inhabits a sacred tree with the goddess Inanna and needs to be expelled. This connection with Inanna, or Ishtar, a deity of love and war, shows how Lilith embodied female duality, both the gift of life and the power of destruction. She was all that the ancient man could not control or understand. Amulets and enchantments of the time sought to ward off these nighttime beings, indicating that their presence was considered concrete, not symbolic. In some artifacts, Lilith appears with wings, claws, and birds, characteristics that would be associated after the so-called bunny's relief, a mysterious piece with a strong female iconographic presence. This Mesopotamian ancestry places Lilith as a link between the ancient spirit world and the later religious tradition, a bridge between mythology and theology. It was in the Middle Ages that Lilith gained her most famous narrative, Adam's first wife. This account is not in the Torah, but in a text called Ben Sira Alphabet, a satirical writing with strong mystical influences. There, Lilith is created from the dust of the earth, just like Adam, without hierarchy. But when he requires her to submit, even sexually, she refuses, says, "We are equal. We were created of the same substance." The tension grows. Lilith pronounces God's ineffable name, wins, and runs away from Eden's garden. 3 angels are sent to bring her back, but she refuses the return. As punishment, God decrees that 100 of his children demons will die every day. In return, she makes a pact: if you see the names of the 3 angels in an amulet near a baby, you will spare the child. Thus was born the ritual use of these names in the popular Jewish tradition. This narrative is not just an exotic fable. It raises deep questions about gender, obedience, and spiritual freedom. Why is a woman who requires equality portrayed as demonic? Why does your refusal become punishment? Ben Sira's alphabet has become, over the centuries, a key text for those seeking to understand not only Lilith, but the ancestral fear of the free and indomitable feminine. A story that tells us more about us than about it. Over time, Lilith was seen as a real threat to the lives of newborns and the health of women in postpartum. To protect themselves, Jewish families adopted practices that mixed mystical tradition and superstition. One of the best known was to hang amulets with the names of the angels Sinoi, Sansonoi, and Samangeloth about the cradle of children. These names represented the angels who, according to Ben Sira's alphabet, confronted Lilith in the desert. Upon seeing the sacred names, Lilith would remember the pact and give up attacking the baby. In addition to the amulets, it was common to write magic formulas and even perform a kind of ritual divorce between the child and Lilith, cutting any spiritual connection with her. In some communities, it was also avoided pronouncing his name aloud, so as not to attract his attention. It was a silent fear, but very present in domestic daily life. These practices show how much Lilith was associated with child death, uncontrolled female sexuality, and dangers of fertility. She symbolized everything that fled to male control, and so it was demonized. But curiously, it was also recognized as a powerful figure, capable of being appeased only by angelic names. The fear she inspired also revealed a veiled reverence. Lilith was not just a danger, it was a force. From the second wave of feminism, especially in the 1970s and 1980s, Lilith was rescued and transformed into a resistance symbol. For many women, she was no longer just a devil dreaded in ancient stories and began to represent the struggle for female autonomy. Theologian Judith Plasko, for example, reinterpreted her Eden escape as an act of freedom, not evil rebellion. Lilith did not run away from God, fled from oppression. This new reading inspired the creation of movements and works that defend female spirituality from other lenses. A striking example is Lilith magazine, created in 1976 in the United States, focused on Jewish feminism. She discusses topics such as gender equality, religious tradition, and women's rights, all under the inspiration of Lilith's mythical figure. The demonized became muse. The forgotten became a protagonist. Lilith came to be seen as the voice of those who do not shut up, the image of the woman who says no when they expect she just obey. In times of discussions about empowerment, role of women in religions, and historical justice, his figure returned in full force. It represents the uncomfortable question that many avoid: what if all that told us about rebellion were actually a cry for equality? Lilith has not disappeared, she's more alive than ever. Lilith's story is at the same time ancient and incredibly current. It begins as a spirit of the desert feared in Mesopotamia, infiltrates biblical texts as a whisper, and gains complete shape in medieval Jewish folklore. But it was in modernity that Lilith found her new role, that of symbol. A symbol that provokes, challenges, and inspires. And perhaps that is precisely what makes it so fascinating. Her trajectory forces us to question gender roles, religious traditions, and even the structures of spiritual power we inherit. Lilith makes us think: who are the silenced voices of our history? What else was hidden behind translations, dogmas, and skewed interpretations? Lilith's figure pushes us out of the comfort zone and invites us to look at the feminine more depth and reverence. Today, it is all this at the same time: myth, memory, mystery, and movement. And his presence continues to echo on the pages of books, social struggles, and silent prayers of those seeking inner freedom. After all, Lilith not only belongs to the past, she belongs to every woman who dares to say no, with every soul that seeks equality, and with all the heart that chooses the truth, even when she scares. Now it tells me, how many other stories like Lilith's do you think they were erased or distorted over the centuries? What if the villains of the narratives are actually forgotten heroes? This video is not intended to give you all the answers, but to give you the right questions. Because sometimes rethinking a myth is the first step to rethink yourself. If this content has teased you, inspired you, or simply opened a new reflection window, already leaves the like and shares with someone who will freak out in this story. And of course, subscribes to the channel and activates the bell, because there is still much more coming. From hidden traditions to forgotten biblical characters, we will continue to excavate the deep layers of faith, history, and human soul. And before you leave, tell me in the comments, who is Lilith for you? A dark figure? Unwronged? An icon of freedom? Your answer may be the beginning of a powerful conversation. And he recalls not every narrative needs to be accepted as absolute truth. Some need to be revisited, others completely rewritten.